Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today on the agenda is making the buns for pambazos. Now, if you don't know what a pambazo is, you're not alone. But it, in the central part of Mexico, is an especially popular sandwich. And the bun is dipped into a red chili sauce and then crisped up. And the whole thing is filled with potatoes and chorizo and lettuce and cream and cheese. And it is so incredibly delicious. And if you make the bun for it, it just takes it over the top. So let me show you how to make this simple bun. So the first thing that we're going to do is to make that sort of starter. A lot of times people will call it a biga. This one starts with a half a cup of flour here, and I'm going to add a third of a cup of water to it, and then measure in what would be the equivalent of 1 package of yeast, which is 2 1/4 teaspoons of the yeast. That's what you find in a packet of yeast. And then I'm just going to stir all of this together. And to get really good flavor in these buns, you do this part of it the day before. I like to let it sit out on the counter and start to get nicely foamy. And then to put it away in the refrigerator overnight and let the flavor develop. I do that in these little deli containers like that. So the next day when you take the top of it off, this is what you're going to see, is this really beautifully risen, fluffy looking mixture here. So now on to making the dough for this. So we have about 3.5 cups of flour here. If you're weighing, which I always encourage everybody to do, that would be 500 grams. And I'm going to take the Biga right in here right now. And then I'm going to add to that the rest of the liquid for this. I'll set that one right over there. The rest of the liquid bit would be 1.25 cups of warm water. And then we're going to add the same amount of yeast to this. So 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, the same amount that went into the Biga, essentially 1 package of that. Now salt, we're going to put 2 teaspoons of salt in here. A little bit of sugar goes into this one, so 1 tablespoon of sugar. And then what sets this one apart, say from the Cemitas buns that I've shown you in the past, is that this one gets a little bit of fat in it. And so what I have for fat here, because I'm going the traditional route, is 3 tablespoons of fresh rendered pork lard. That'll give it that really great richness. You could easily use a vegetable shortening here if you want to do that. And then I am working with a mixer here that has a dough hook, and so I'm going to put that on. You could do all of this mixing by hand and then kneading by hand. I've done that many times myself, but it'll take a couple of minutes for this to sort of come together as a dough. And then we're going to leave it on this medium-low speed for about 6 minutes until it looks very elastic and comes away from the side of the bowl. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Okay, this looks just what I expect it to look like, and I want to show you what that is, because this is essentially the same thing that you would be looking for if you were kneading this by hand. But do you see how smooth this is? Probably easier for you to see if I can just pull the whole thing out. But do you see how smooth this is? So this is a soft dough, and so it will stick to your hands a little bit, but you could see just how beautifully smooth it is. Okay, so I'm going to put that back in there. And our next step after all of this is just to let it rise. So I'm going to cover this with a towel and set it aside for about an hour is what I'm going to expect. But what I really want it to be is very puffy and about double in its size. All right. I'm going to turn this risen dough. I'm kind of deflating it as I'm going here, but I'm going to turn that out onto a pretty heavily floured work surface here. And then I'll grab a little bit more flour to sprinkle on the top of it. And this is the point at which we want to, as the bakers would say, degas it. Okay, so press out all of that gas that has formed in it. And then this we are going to divide into 8 pieces. So I usually start from a kind of rectangle there, and then I will cut it in half, and then the half in half, and then each one of those, say, into 4 like that. If you're looking to have these precisely the same weight, then it's about 125 grams for those of you that are very precise bakers here. Okay, so we're going to put that over there. And then we're going to do the forming into a ball. So really classic doing this, which is to throw it down like that and then cup your hand over it. Now, a couple of things to think about here is you want to have some traction on the work surface, so you can't have too much flour down there. And it should pop up like that. Now, second time I'm going to show you how to do this. I throw it down because it helps it to stick just a little bit. But I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with my hand, because I have seen people literally cup over the top, but no pressure coming down from the top. And so they go like this, and that does absolutely nothing. So I'm keeping all of my fingertips and the heel of my hand on the work surface here, but I'm also pressing down so that I have firm contact with the ball of dough through the whole thing. And it just pops right up like that. So as I am forming these guys, I'm going to put them over here on the, I've got 2 baking sheets with silpats on them. I like to work with the silicone mats. If you have parchment paper, you could do that. Or if you have none of that, you could lightly grease and flour just to keep them from sticking to anything. But I'm going to form all of these and then let them sit for about 10 minutes and then form them the final time, which is simply to press them down to get them out to a 4-inch circle. And from that, I will be able to let them rise and go into the oven. 10 minutes has passed, and I am going to put a bunch of flour here because this bun is always kind of crusted in flour. So I'm going to pick them up off of the silpat like this and then just lay them into the flour. Pat them slightly because I want about a 4-inch circumference of this thing now, and then put them back onto the silpat. Now, once I get all of these done, they are ready for their final proofing, their final rise, which should take about, I'm going to say about 30 minutes, but you want to be careful not to let them rise too much because they'll likely collapse back on themselves. You can see that these guys have doubled in size, but they're not more than double. An important thing here to get the right shape and texture in them. And I've got the oven on 400 degrees, and I'm going to slide these 2 in here about 18 minutes until they're nicely browned on top. Just look at these beauties. Now, when you look at them, you're going to think immediately, whoa, if I'm going to go that far, couldn't I use these for hamburger buns? I will tell you, the texture of them and the flavor of them is perfect for hamburger buns. But what I've got these intended for is Pambazos Compuestos, or the Finnish Pambazo sandwich. And coming up, I'm going to show you how to turn these into that.